Hi everyone, this is Mich Monk here with a new podcast, They Wish You Were Sheep. And I'm talking about the media and their focus on Harry and Meghan. So we're going to do a little bit of historical context and then we'll talk about Harry and Meghan. Media can drive the narrative, whether it's the interactive social media or the big guys of media conglomerates. And more, we as a society are the live action lab rats feasting and synthesizing a variety of messages that are engineered to elicit a desired reaction. In an opinion piece in the Times Magazine about journalistic objectivity, some felt that the US media was always partisan, that this idea of media being neutral was more of a professional ideal that was around in the 1920s. And as mergers occurred, a smaller number of media outlets had to feed a wider readership. And it was never a successful venture as the most powerful got to have their say without any analysis or context. And people like Senator Joseph McCarthy, who led blacklisting of American citizens and congressional trials, was covered by this respectful media, while opinion pieces called him a dangerous demagogue. After the McCarthy era, journalism changed their tactics to include interpretation and analysis. So you could include professional judgment, but not personal opinion. And although both political spectrums argued about liberal or conservative bias, the state of media coverage stayed the same until print media declined. And then entities like Facebook and Google started taking the lion's share of online ad revenue. The competition for not only readers but loyal, engaged readers began. The more provocative a headline, the better. Objective articles bored readers. The salacious articles with the anonymous sources and the titillating bits fed the online reader's appetite that was already honed on reality shows like the Housewife franchise or the over-the-top characters like the Kardashians and Trump and shows like The Big Brother. What we're seeing in the UK is that the good sources are merging their practices to mimic the bad sources, all too frequently making it difficult for an objective listening viewing experience. Because the money is in the number of eyes watching, ears listening, mouths sharing, and fingers clicking on the links. It's all about algorithms, the ratings, that sweet spot calculation that draws the advertisers and causes lots of money to be spent for your consumption and profiting for the media hounds. Now, I'm of the MySpace generation. When we looked at Facebook as a college thing, we had no interest in expanding our base to get to know strangers. We had no real desire to share our thoughts as if standing at the corner of a busy intersection, ranting about life, love, or politics was a thing, as we do now on Twitter. In the midst of this industry shakeup, print media turned to digitizing, but the online reading experience sucked, mainly because the format used was difficult to enjoy the flow of reading from one page to the other. So massive dollars went into expanding industry online. And we started getting entertainment disguised as news to get not only my generation's attention, but the ones coming after me that had more discretionary income than any other generation. They had purchase power, they extolled a more independent lifestyle, their opinions could sway corporations like the boycott of companies working in apartheid South Africa. In the US side, the news went from informing to a mix of informing with a talk show style or even entertainment style. Before you'd have your one or two TV anchor talking to you and you'd listen to them. Now we have panels of pundits of varying qualifications to shows like The Daily Show with Trevor Noah, Bill Maher, John Oliver, and so on, where the serious bits are now wrapped in a comedic filter. And then you have the likes of TMZ, Entertainment Tonight, and so on, and then the online tabloid magazines that also create deeper channels of access to public consumption. And they have managed to repackage their brand to appear as serious news. Now, in my research, I found this one source that was pretty interesting, opendemocracy.net, that states there are 5 reasons the British media will not be free and independent. And I do love lists. So the first was that billionaires set the agenda. And they had a chart that showed the list of the British media. So I grabbed a few for us to talk about. Daily Mail and Mail on Sunday and Metro are all owned by Lord Rothermere, who lives in France. Readership is approximately 18 to 19 million. It's conservatively biased. Moving on to The Sun and Sun on Sunday, The Times and Sunday Times by Rupert Murdoch. He lives in the U.S. Conservative biased with about 12, 13 million readers. Express and Sunday Express by Richard Desmond, lives in the UK. Conservative bias, 6 million readership. Telegraph and Sunday Telegraph by David and Frederick Barclay, who also own the Ritz. Conservative bias, 5.1 million readers. London Evening Standard and The Independent by the Lebedev family. Father's ex-KGB, living in Russia. Son lives in the UK. About 5 to 6 million readers. So you can see a common theme with these billionaires, but we'll get back to that. The second reason is corporate advertising revenue censors content. So any article critical of certain corporations or interests will be edited to fit the satisfaction of those paying for advertising. So, for instance, examples in the US might be if you attack talking about the police, if you attack talking about capitalism or Wall Street or something like that. In the UK, it would be that you're talking about the royals, or that you're being highly critical of, the banks or Brexit, or things like that. The advertisers have control. Third reason, privately educated and white and male. So those were the commonalities that we found when you looked at the billionaires. Privately educated, white, and male. Now, that doesn't mean that things should go south because of that. However, what are the chances that you're going to get fear and media that is pushing, for instance, diversity, that they're going to show the benefits of diversity, that they wouldn't show what austere measures would do? They would be promoting racist institutions, racist systems. They would keep readers at the low information base of the spectrum. Number 4, using these supposedly neutral sources for targeted political purposes. And they saw that with the Scottish referendum, Iraq war, and 2008 financial crisis, based on the number of hours that were dedicated to just one side of the argument on these things. We know that with Harry and Meghan, the number of articles, the number of hours is astronomical when compared to coverage of other royals. And the last reason they gave was that intelligence services manipulate the media. Now, that didn't hold much interest for me, for my purpose of talking about Harry and Meghan. But I will say that I have seen an increase of conspiracy theorists in mainstream media more so than ever. And so for America, we've got QAnon and we've got Fox News. Some might say on the other side is it's like an MSNBC or CNN, whatever. But in the times of the pandemic, we're seeing doctors or other people with questionable backgrounds coming out and giving their theory of what the cures are or what we should be doing next and so on. So it's definitely, the media is not necessarily our friend. But listen up. Is there any doubt that campaigns and resources were dedicated to demeaning, ripping apart, and obliterating Meghan's inclusion and influence? And while the media has been softer on Harry, once he stopped playing ball with the royals, he's now treated as a defector and prodigal son. He needs to ask for forgiveness to be allowed back into the fold. The amount of articles and on-air commentary on this couple show that the campaign and financial resources have not diminished over time. The scattered positive pieces are not by accident. The ebb and flow play to the reader's emotions so that when they get too exhausted, there is a let up. And those who think the tide has changed then relax and may even start clicking on the articles or not change the TV channel. But then the British media dive right back in because the main aim is to protect the royal institution, maintain old school tradition, and while COVID has hindered the Queen's ability to interact, there is danger that if the royals aren't in your face, the crowd will get ambivalent. And ambivalence is as deadly as those who consciously choose not to engage with this toxic news landscape. In the case of Meghan and Harry, the narrative was shaped in the editorial meetings first to bump against the boundaries, sort of testing the waters to see how far they could go. And they certainly got a reaction from Harry with an official statement, but that was a temporary stay on the part of the media, because their operatives had royal sources and allies to sabotage Harry's wishes. And as we have learned, there was enough behind-the-scenes conflict surrounding the couple's wedding that fueled the media's boldness to encompass not only Harry and Meghan, but her father and her half-siblings. Meanwhile, crickets in the silence came from the rest of the royal pack as we were led to believe that they never complain, never explain, a mythos that can be ridiculed by the number of times the royals have intervened for their own self-interests. By the time Meghan was pregnant, the media had no pretension of being supportive or fair. They were well underway with the campaign to demean and slander her. Every action she made, everything she said, was not only under scrutiny, but was always read and judged through a biased lens. The media fanned the flames to criticize Meghan touching her pregnant bump, and the willing public might as well have taken up torches and marched to Frogmore to harass and be angered by Meghan's self-care. Their vitriol about whether she was pregnant and why she has to touch her belly was as insane as a village of idiots going after women deemed witches or that they're immoral heathens. Their cultivated hate had that level of cultist fanatical hysteria. Any empathy from the mothers in that public was dry and barren as the Death Valley's desert, and I say shame on every one of them for what they did. The push for Meghan to leave, whether it was to leave Harry and or leave the island, became the new frame around destroying her life. In their eyes, she was no longer human. She was this island's slave to be abused and degraded with the same anger that runs through their colonizing veins. And for the people of color on that island, the British version of coons, the British versions of Uncle Toms, these self-hating bitches who willingly stepped up to be the plantation overseers, May your soul never know a moment's peace until you have a come to Jesus moment. How deep must be their well of hate to be locked in a body and skin that they despise and therefore project that animus on a woman of color who bravely, maybe even naively, thought she would be treated with dignity and respect. But Meghan, thank goodness, had a lot of good people. And when I say good, I don't extend that to people who are sympathetic but don't have the courage to open their mouths. There are a lot of POC celebrities, journalists, and authors who said nothing. Didn't tweet support, didn't criticize the royals, were basically punks, and sacrificed nothing to lift up Meghan. I know some of them probably desire that Sir and Dame title, fake title, and so they don't want to make anyone upset. But I'll give a shout out to the women of the members of Parliament who did have an official statement. Yet now that Meghan is on her own soil and doing her thing, the newly minted supporters are fit to open their mouths and act like they were her cheerleader all along. Meghan left the island and the senior royals, and I hope she tosses back all their shackles and tell them to shove their HRH title. This woman had a fine reputation, had clout, had a voice, had her coins before Harry dipped into her light. And after she left, her power and influence exploded. Why? Because she cut the cord from the so-called powerful institution, the British royal firm. They're used to being the ones to cut folk off and turn their backs on them. They're used to giving the cold shoulder and showing open disdain by not inviting or including someone to one of their royal events. The royal snub gets broadcasted and reported on with glee. But in this case, it was Meghan who did the cutting off and the I am so unbothered by you lot. Because Meghan and her man, Meghan and her baby said deuces and stepped off. And when she returned for the encore, she came back not like a princess, but like a damn queen with her rich melanin skin showing off colors that were bright and vibrant and matching her husband's attire. She walked through her space with more regal poise and bearing than those who were born into it, or those trained like a well-coiffed poodle for the best in show. And the public's praise for her and Harry during that time, along with some journalists wringing their hands that the royals had made a big mistake, caused the British media to reset for a quick minute. But then they re-engaged with even harsher criticism. Remember, the British media are there to protect and serve the institution. Even when they criticize a royal, it is not at the threat of losing the monarchy. They will never push it that far. But on that note, let me segue for a minute. Remember the list that had the Queen beating Meghan as most popular? Child, please with that nonsense. There is no competition. The deck is stacked for the Queen, so let's just do a collective shrug. Why? Because at this very second, which one of them is able to leave their house and do normal things? Who can give her opinion free and unbothered about a variety of subjects, including politics? Who can have a girl's day or hang out with a close relative without having to make an appointment? The popularity lists and the influential lists are to feed the public so they can get worked up or cheer depending on who they like or which fan club they want to be in. And maybe it takes some life experience and some balancing your priorities not to care about shallow stuff like that. So when Team Queen was set up to be the one bullied by the enemy Team Meghan, it would be laughable because it was so poorly executed by the media. We saw through the propping up of Betty as the she's not a racist And she has black friends nonsense. They dragged out the evidence of her tapping her feet to reggae, holding her black BFF Barack as a near and dear friend. Even Michelle Obama talked about her fondness for Betty in her book, Becoming. In the book, Michelle said when she hugged the Queen, Betty pressed closer to her. To me, that sounds like Betty is lonely, in need for personal interaction, and somebody just touching that woman. Michelle said when the Queen switched up who was going to ride in the front and wanted Michelle to ride with her in the back, the Queen shrugged off the protocol. Again, it sounds like Betty is craving some friendship, some real, genuine friendship. So somewhere in there, a rebel is buried in that soul. But this rebel only seems to pop her head up when it suits a particular need rather than as a consistent manner of how she deals with unfairness. The Queen, Britain's cheerleader, is currently benched during this pandemic. We can expect the media to continue to go all out to propping her up, even if it means tearing down her grandson and his wife. After all, we've heard that Harry has disappointed her and crushed her. We've heard that Harry yelled at her or in front of her or whatever. That's just piffle sticks. But in keeping the cheerleader prominent and relevant, the stink of scandal also must be kept at bay. So as Andrew's fart cloud continues to grow, continues to pollute, continues to distract, but for the saving grace of the media and the enablers, they have reset and refocused on Harry and Meghan, now living in America in their house and under their independence. So what can they do from afar? They now want to tear her apart, criticize body language, judge her house, still talk about Harry falling under her spell. Boy, do they love their witch motifs. They want their British public not to forget to hate this couple. Don't be impressed, don't be inspired, don't be influenced. Remember, royals good, Harry and Meghan bad. Don't think about the pandemic, don't think about recession, don't think about Andrew, don't think about William. Okay, think about how sad and overworked William is because it's all Harry and Meghan's fault. And the stages of attack have themes that pull on racist, sexist tropes, but it also is about having the best timing and pushing common talking points. Sometimes the deluge of negativity seems overwhelming, as if facing a tsunami. So does that wave crash in and wipe out their good works? Does it erase what they have done? Does it make the supporters quake and doubt their loyalty? The various fundraisers just in 2020 alone, facilitated by the Sussex Squad, has slapped down the media's attempts to dismantling Meghan's influence. The international media that has no obligation to the firm have praised Meghan and uplifted her accomplishments. The current political landscape in America has provided an ample opportunity for us to witness Meghan's superpowers in effect. Her ability to connect with young people and her passion for community activism. The tsunami is losing effect outside and beyond that island. And until the British public take a stand against the constant diet of biased news that is not to their benefit, they will stay stagnant and backward focused in a time where their youth and young people can be bold with their country's future. Remember, they still have to deal with Brexit. And we in America, we have a whole lot to deal with. So I'm not saying that we are any better off than they are. But I'll leave on a hopeful note that those visits that Meghan did at the school with the community hub, with her various charities and connections, will not be in vain. They are actually the seeds planted for a future harvest. Meghan's imprint is part of two countries' history. Her real supporters are from around the world. Her kindness and strength will fight the British media's darkness, and I'm 1000% sure on this. So on that note, this is Mich Monk signing out until we meet again. Ubuntu means I am because you are.